There's a better way to a better day. We call it the Betterment Project. The journey of betterment begins with practical solutions to improve your quality of life. The future is bright when you decide to take small steps in the right direction. We will never reach perfection, but we can always obtain betterment.
Hey everybody, this is Lakin and I'm here with my friend Anne. And today we are going to be talking about the topic of fear. So, fear to me is a feeling or emotion based on wrong thinking. So, I feel like whatever we magnify in our minds becomes bigger and bigger. Um, and there's actually a scripture that goes along with that. It's in Job, and it talks about that which I feared came upon me. So, allowing fear to dictate our decisions, I think, is a huge obstacle that we have to overcome because fear is just like any other emotion.
Right.
We have feelings of happiness, sadness, and fear is just on that list of different emotions that we have. And we have to, along with the rest of our emotions, whether it's anger or, you know, unhappiness or whatever it is, we have to learn how to not allow our feelings to dictate us. And I think fear is, to me, when I think of fear, I think that's like one of the most hardest emotions for me to overcome.
Yeah, I'm really bad with fear. My fears are, it's funny, like I have a fear of insects, all insects pretty much. And that's an irrational fear because what are they going to do to me? I mean, they're not going to, like I freak out
Right.
over like stink bugs or something. Stink bugs aren't going to kill me. And I'm like 800 million times bigger than they are, and I can kill them in 5 seconds. But,
Right.
like, I'm terrified of them. And that is completely irrational and stupid. And I know this. But like if it's like a fear that actually makes sense to be fearful of, it's like for some reason I can handle that better, which doesn't make any sense at all.
I have the same issue with birds. I am terrified of birds.
Yeah,
And
so
I have really thought about this over my lifetime, and I really feel like that fear of birds came from when I was younger. My mom took me to go feed some ducks,
mhm.
and the duck chased me and bit me.
Are you serious?
And yeah, this
Where
was
did it
a
bite
real
you? How did
story.
it bite you?
I don't remember. I was really young. But I remember it biting me. Like, I mean, I guess they don't, with its little beak or
Oh,
whatever.
yeah, that's funny.
But yeah, so I don't know if that's where it stemmed from. I think trying to figure out where where your fear is stemming from, where it is coming from is so vital to be able to overcome that fear. So when I'm faced like with different situations, I try to sit and figure out, or just different emotions in general, I try to sit and figure out where is this coming from,
Mhm.
and that's what took me all the way back to being, 4
Getting
years
by the
old
duck.
and getting bit by a duck and chased by a duck. And, I still haven't overcome that fear, but, I feel like I found the root cause of that fear and
Mhm.
where it stems from, so, that kinda helps along the way because when you don't know where your fear is coming from, it makes it even worse, I think.
Also, just like thinking about
are asking yourself, does this fear make sense? Because like 9 times out of 10, your fears don't really make sense.
Right.
They're just coming out of left field, like just affecting you. Like if you were scared to go for an interview at a job, it's like, what are you so scared of? Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You don't get the job? I mean,
Right.
it's not like your life is in danger. But the sad part is we get so hyped up over these little things that they prevent us from living our lives to their fullest, you know?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Fear can keep you from doing a lot of things. And I just have learned, there's like an art of surrender when it comes to fear. Like you have to, in order to have peace and not live your life in fear, we got to live sometimes moment by moment.
Mhm,
Or, as they say, in NA, just for today,
mhm,
or in the Bible, they say God gives us what we need just for today. We can't control the future, we can't control the past. But we just got to take life moment by moment.
right,
And I think that for me, when I break it down simplify it in that way, that it helps me to become more centered
and present,
and um just be able to, yeah, be in the present. And because I find myself, fearing over, I mean, it can be money issues, just things that seem to be out of my control at the moment. But, you know, I can't control, different bills or things that might happen along the way that cost me expenses or things like that. I have to think about, okay, right now I'm taken care of.
mhm,
Right now, I have a roof over my head. Right now, I, have a car I can drive. Right now, I'm able to feed myself,
mhm,
you know, and break it down and simplify it in that type of way. Because when we're focusing so much on the need of something, I think that's what creates the fear, or the lack of something. It stirs up that fear inside of us, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And we just have to refocus what we're thinking on, and just live in the moment. And you got to think, what is the opposite of fear? What do you think of when you think of the opposite of fear? I think of
I think of peace,
peace. Yeah, that's definitely one of them. I
confidence,
think of hope.
yeah, hope,
Yeah, hope. Like, so I choose to think on, try to choose to think on hopeful things,
mhm,
and it says in the Bible 365 times, do not fear. That's enough verses for one day of the year. That's how important it is to not give into fear, and how big of a battle fear can be for people.
right. Well, I think what you were saying earlier about like recognizing that right now you have a roof over your head, right now you have a car you can drive, right now you have a job. That's like sort of shifting your focus to gratitude for what you currently have instead of
Mhm.
projecting yourself into the future, the unknown of what you may or may not have.
Right.
It's that unknown that really is the problem, I think. But having a gratitude does two different things. It brings you back to your present, and it also shifts your mindset to more positive thinking. And positive
Mm.
thinking will take you a lot further than negative thinking. Negative thinking is a dead end road.
Yeah, it don't get you anywhere.
No.
No. And I just think of like um different things that have happened in my life, like when I mentioned earlier that scripture that was in Job that talked about, the thing which I feared the most came upon me. I think about like looking back on my life, like the things that I feared so deeply ended up manifesting and happening in my life.
Mhm.
And I gave so much energy and so much worry and so much just,
Focus.
emotion into it.
Yeah.
I fed it,
Right.
you know?
Exactly. Yep.
But we could do the opposite, we can change the way that we're thinking. You did that to me this weekend. You're like, "Listen, your thinking's wrong. Um, you can be upset about it for a little while, but tomorrow you need to start thinking differently."
Right.
And I'm like, man, she's right. Like, sometimes we just need those reality checks.
Right.
Like, wait a minute, my thinking sucks right now.
Yeah.
What is this doing for me? But it's doing nothing but making me more miserable.
It just makes it 10 times harder. Makes the fear 10 times bigger, the pain 10 times bigger, makes everything bigger and worse.
Yeah. And for what reason?
I
You
mean,
know?
it's not like your worry and fear is doing anything to solve the problem, you know?
No, it's definitely not. It's definitely not. I heard this, I don't know where it came from, but you've probably heard it too. It talks about worrying, is like sitting in a rocking chair. You go back and forth and you get nowhere.
Yeah, that's a good.
And like I feel like worrying a lot of times for me goes hand in hand with fear.
Mhm.
I start worrying about a situation, and then it stirs up the fear inside of me,
Right.
and I start fearing for things. And
What about, like, back to irrational fears? Because that's something I personally have dealt with today. Um, I had a fly in my house and I have no fly swatter, and I was just freaking out over what am I going to do about this fly, which is so ridiculous. I can't even believe I'm admitting this. But
there's so many people that have fears like that though. I mean, Google it. There's thousands, of fears and phobias that people have that are totally irrational.
right,
Like that's a normal thing.
like your fear of the birds. Like, I guess my question is, if you were to, for some reason, be with a group of people and they, like, maybe you were going to a birthday party and they were having the birthday party in an aviary, which is like one of those giant, like, screen or glass. I don't really know. I've never been in one, but where all the birds are around, and they can like
Oh no.
land on you and stuff. Like,
Yeah,
how would you deal with that?
I wouldn't go.
Right, you wouldn't go. But do you think that maybe you could get beyond it? Is there any way you could convince yourself to, like, squelch the fear enough to go? Like, maybe you could tell yourself, like, these are God's creatures. Like, that's what I try to tell myself when bugs get into my life. I'm like, these are God's creatures. God made these. So,
Because you're killing them.
well, I don't really kill them. I don't murder them. I just spray them with air freshener until they give up and die. I think it's a pretty
Okay, so you torture them.
well, it just depends on what you look at, how you look at it.
I don't know. See, okay, I lived in Florida for a very short, brief while. It was a stint in a rehab that I was at. And I kid you not, there were pigeons, these I guess they were pigeons. I don't know. They weren't like seagulls or anything. They were like these pigeon-like birds.
Mm,
Um, and they just would walk around constantly outside. And I was in there for 30 days, and for 30 days, I never got over these birds. Like,
mm,
they just wouldn't move out of your way. It's like they just, like, walked around and owned the place, you know?
yeah.
And I'm, like, having to live there at the time, and I never got over it. I never got over it. Like, I don't know. And people like used to think that my fear was just hysterical. Like I remember going to the beach with my ex-husband one time and he clearly said, "Do not feed the seagulls."
Right.
And he throws something, I don't know, like bread or a piece of chip or something, and
Mm,
all of a sudden these seagulls just
warm.
start swarming me.
Oh
And
god.
I am running, screaming my head off like a maniac, and
Right.
all these people getting drunk on the beach are just pointing and laughing at me.
Yeah.
But to me, it was a real fear. Like, I
Right.
really felt the fear deep down inside of me.
But I guess, like, what is your fear? What is that fear about? I mean, what do you think is gonna happen? Like, they're gonna peck your eyeballs out, or they're just gonna. I
I
mean,
don't know. Like,
see, I think
I
that's the
really
problem.
I really don't
I think maybe
know.
you should think really hard about what are you so scared of about these birds? Because when
I
you
think
think about
maybe because it hurt me. I got that duck hurt me one time,
it,
and I really trusted that duck. I
right?
was a little girl. I trusted that duck. You
Okay.
know, I had complete faith in that duck that he was going to let me feed him because I've fed ducks before.
Mm,
And that duck broke my trust.
right.
So I don't know if that's what it is, but like I'm not necessarily like scared they're gonna peck my eyes out or like I do their wings freak me out like and I don't want them flapping in my hair and stuff and oh no.
I mean, but I think if you were to really think about, like, okay, what is the worst case scenario with these birds? I think you'll find there really isn't anything that terrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Like, if they
I'm
were
not
to come
mad, I've
flap in your hair,
survived.
if they were to come flap all up in your hair, which I seriously doubt they would, it's not going to kill you. It's probably not going to hurt you. You could probably just bat your arm and they'll fly away. You know what I mean?
Okay, so what about you and the fly then? You want to focus on me and this bird. What about you and this fly?
All right. Well, the fly, I mean, the thing about the fly was I'm thinking, first of all, I wasn't sure if it was a fly or a bee. I'm still not really sure what it was, but I was just thinking, okay, if this fly is going to be in here, then I'm not going to be able to sleep because it could land on my mouth in the middle of the night. Like, what if it got in my mouth? What if I swallowed it? I mean, like, who knows what could happen? Flies
Well,
are,
you know that they say that we swallow like so many spiders a night in our sleep within a year. It's like a weird number.
that's disturbing. We shouldn't talk about that. That'll just mess me up for tonight.
Okay, so I don't think that, we really have the solution for the irrational fears right now.
Okay.
So maybe we should go back to the fears that we can control.
Okay. And good idea. We'll hit these another time.
Another time because I don't think either one of us have figured that one out yet.
No.
But I mean, you know, I guess you could invent coping. We'll talk about the irrational fears. I guess you could invent coping mechanisms to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
mantras or something.
yeah, or just telling yourself over and over, it's just a duck. It's just a duck. It's
Right.
just a duck.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like trying to, because if we can change the way that we're thinking, then that's going to get us to be able to change the way that we feel
Right.
about a
It's all
situation.
about perspective. as most things are.
Right.
And when
Yeah, just like you were saying, it's God's creature. We got to break, you know what I mean, the belief system that we've built.
mm,
However, it came about, we got to break the belief system in our mind first, I think,
mhm,
and rebuild it, you know, and I think that's something that takes practice, it takes time to do.
yeah,
There was a couple quotes I found in this book that I read that were pretty good. This one is by Charles Stanley, and this says basically there are two paths you can walk, faith or fear. It's impossible to simultaneously trust God and not trust God.
that's true. You
So
can't do happy and sad at the same time. You can't do fear
yeah,
and strength at the same time.
right.
If you choose the other one, then the fear won't be able to exist.
Exactly. And then this one I thought was a good one too. This one's by Dale Carnegie. It says, "You can conquer almost any fear if you will only make up your mind to do so. For remember, fear doesn't exist anywhere except in the mind."
Hmm.
I thought that was good.
It's true. It doesn't.
So, you know, and it's not that we're, you know, denying the existence of fear. Um, it's recognizing it for what it is. Just I think like, you know, with any other feeling, it's not denying its existence, but
Yeah, it's like calling it
it's
out. It's saying this is a fear. That's what this is. This is
yeah, this
fear.
is a fear. And, you know, sometimes like I think about like not even just things that we fear, but you know, maybe social anxiety or public speaking or something like that.
Mm,
And I think of having to do it afraid. You know, like
right.
you have to conquer that fear. You have sometimes we have to do things feeling while we're feeling the feeling of fear,
Right. Like you
you
said, do
know?
it great.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's how we grow is when we decide to do it with fear and do it anyway. And that's when we can grow and we can experience new things and we can learn that our fears were just fears.
yeah, exactly.
And lots of times the things you fear turn out to be your greatest blessings. For example, when I was a little kid, I think I was like 5 or 6, I wanted a dog so bad I could just taste it. And I finally convinced my parents to get me and my sister a dog. So we went to the pet store and there was this cute little black poodle and it was so adorable. And me and my sister were like, oh, that's the one we want. We want that dog. So they took it out of the cage and they put it down on the floor and it started chasing me and my sister. And my sister was bigger than me, so she like managed to get away from the dog. And then it was just chasing me around and around and around and around and around and around and around my dad. And finally I climbed him like a tree to get away from the dog. And for some reason my parents bought the dog, even though me and my sister were that terrified of the dog. So then we had this dog that me and my sister would not touch, we would not go near. The poor dog had to be locked up in the laundry room for like 2 weeks. This dog was living in the laundry room because we were too scared of it. And one night at dinner, my mom was like, look, if you girls can't even touch the dog, we're going to have to take the dog back. And I was like, no, 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 I want the dog. I want the dog. And she was like, no, obviously you don't. And I decided right then, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm going to get up. I'm going to go into that laundry room. I'm going to open the door. And if that dog bites me to death, I'm going to let it do it just so that I can prove to my mom that I deserve this dog. And so I got really brave and I went and I opened the door, and the dog, Pepper, she jumped up on me and started licking me like crazy. And then I immediately fell in love with her. And she was like my best friend for the next 12 years.
It just shows you how big of a liar fear is.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? That emotion is such a liar.
Right.
It's just, it's so deceptive and so deceiving, and it just keeps us from things. And you're like, you know what? If that's the end of me, I'm gonna open this door and I'm gonna take on this dog, you know? And that's how we have to get that way in life with things. Like, you know, whether it's a new job or you know, whatever it is, we just have to just sometimes the only way to conquer fear is to just grab it by the horns and just be courageous,
Yeah. Face it
you
down.
know? Yeah, just chase it down. Do it afraid.
Yep.
Do it afraid. And once you realize, you know, you're like, oh my gosh, that was not what I expected at
Right.
all,
Yeah.
you know, or it wasn't, man, that wasn't bad at all.
Mhm.
And it gives you a little bit more confidence too in the future, you know, with
Right.
different
With
things.
more fears, with future fears. 'Cause
Right.
you know you had experience facing down a fear and it worked out.
Yeah, fear. I could just talk about fear, you know, we could go on and on about this subject, but basically, I feel like today what we, you know, got down to was fear is a feeling or emotion based on wrong thinking,
Mhm.
period.
Yep.
And the only way to live free from fear is to confront it, do it afraid.
Yes.
And once you do that, you're able to do other things, you know, move on.
Yep. That makes total sense. I completely agree.
So I just thank y'all for joining us tonight as we talked about the emotion of fear. And we will see you again next time. Bye.
Bye.